I would say too, if there are people listening who haven't experienced it, who are looking for ways to help their person who has gone through a suicide loss that's close to them, I think it's to listen. I think it's to listen to the cues and clues that your person who is lost is expressing. And maybe they're subtly asking for time. Maybe they're subtly asking for space. Maybe they're subtly asking for a moment to talk about their person. But just be aware instead of like coming back to the person, be like, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know. Lasagna. Just send me a lasagna. Like, I don't know.
Hello and welcome back. My name is Will, the Right Wizard, and on this podcast we ask the question that echoes from absurdist philosophy: should I kill myself or should I have a cup of coffee? Well, you're listening to I Choose Coffee, where we talk about mental health, suicide awareness, and the daily choice to keep on living. Before we begin, just a heads up, this episode includes discussions of suicide and grief. Please take care while listening and give yourself permission to pause or step away if you need to. Today, I am joined by Vanessa Rawecki. Vanessa is an entrepreneur and creator of the Lifesite. She is also a member of the Suicide Survivor Program that's run through the Distress Center of Greater Toronto. She joined me today to share her story of suicide loss, her journey through grief, and her experience in the program. And honestly, she shows up with such authenticity, warmth, and courage. I absolutely loved this conversation. So grab your cup of whatever it is that you drink and let's dive in. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, so nice to have you here. So before we dive in, there's a little tradition I want to do here on I Choose Coffee. And that question is, what's your favorite drink these days? And what is it that you love about it?
The healthier version of me wants to say some like fancy herbal tea that like rejuvenates me and nourishes me. But the real me right now will actually say black coffee.
Yes.
And I don't know why. There's just something recently about having a black coffee that feels like it's strong. It gives me a bit of a jump start. And I don't have many throughout the day. Like I have one, but like that's one that I savor, especially before working out or something like that, right? So there's nothing in it. It's just me and the coffee and the sun rising. And it just, I don't know, I've associated it with the start of the day and it gives me energy. And lately I've really been enjoying it.
Well, we really appreciate that answer here on I Choose Coffee,
Yeah.
because it was one of the reasons that I wanted to call this podcast I Choose Coffee as well, because I have coffee every day. I have it black as
Yeah.
well. And I love that moment of getting up in the morning and just even hearing the brewing coffee. Like I
Yes.
find it very relaxing and it's like a starting point to the day, right?
Yeah, there's something about smelling coffee throughout a house too. So I live in a
Yes.
house where there's a few other apartments, and whenever they brew coffee, it, like comes up through the vents, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll have one too.
Maybe it's time.
Yeah, maybe it's
Right?
time. Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
And so the reason that we are together today is we're going to be talking about the Suicide Survivor Program
Yes.
that is run through the Distress Center of Greater Toronto. So, to your own comfort level, would you care to share your story of how you came to find this program?
Yeah, I would. So late last year, I lost my boyfriend, my partner, to suicide. Um, And I find myself in like varying degrees of how to tell this story. It's still quite fresh for
Mm,
me. And one of the things that has dawned on me as I share my story, our story, with other people is that it inevitably sort of starts with his death. And lately, that hasn't been feeling that great for me. I mean, it's obviously a very traumatic experience. It's a type of death like I've never known and experienced in my life before. This is the first time somebody
mm,
near to me, close to me, has died by suicide. Um, and I really think it's important, and I hope I get a chance to sort of share more about his life and our
mhm.
relationship to honor that. Um, because the story is in parallel to how he died,
Right.
and then sort of what unfolded from that moment on. So
Mhm.
I'll just say that I absolutely loved walking the world with this man. He was a lover of travel, of trying new things, of adventure, of meeting new people, which for me just really dovetailed nicely into how I like to operate in the world. So we really found a unique connection with one another. Yeah, he was my person, and
Yeah.
I loved having him in my life. And it's been a really difficult journey over these last few months now,
Mm.
not having him around in the same shape, form that I was used to. So, I guess to give his story a bit of a nutshell, he had been moving through a very precarious time in his life. There were a lot of immense life stressors that were taking place in his life. Um, that slowly eroded his confidence, his mental health, his ability to be in the world. And ultimately, as you know, because we're here on this topic, he decided to end his life. That explanation does no justice to
Yeah. Of
what actually happened. I can't even give it
course.
justice or do it justice because it's not even my story to tell. I can just tell my experience in parallel to his.
Hmm.
So there's so much more nuance, there's so much more complication, there's so much more to express that I could spend a lifetime describing what brought me to the SSP. Um, so I'll leave it at that. I'm not an expert in grief. I'm not an
Yeah.
expert in suicide. And my God, when it is in front of you and it's happening around you or it's happened with a loved one, you really don't know who to turn to or how to explain it or what it's even doing to your own body and mind and spirit. So I scoured the internet when I had the wherewithal to find something. And there are a lot of resources out there,
Hmm.
which, at the time, you don't even know what you're looking for. I was still deeply in shock. Um, and can become very overwhelming to see all of the resources out there. But for some reason, my path led me from the distress hotline to this program to speak with somebody that ran this program that I could seek out help and I could seek out resources. And the first thing that came to surface was this program, the one-on-one support from experienced
Hmm.
counselors, and then subsequent to that, the group stuff.
Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that. Like,
Thank you.
it takes so much courage, really, to
Yeah.
just start talking about it, and
Mm,
you doing that is really truly incredible.
they are.
Because you're giving life to his story. And like I really love what you said, like that in parallel, right? Like you only have your experience, but really it's like it's his story, but now it's you experience through you. I thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, even before we sat down to talk today, I had a bit of a talk out loud to him, um, to
Mm.
ask him for his permission and his forgiveness for whatever I say or express here, saying this is just my story. I don't purport to be an expert in this or to be able to speak on anybody's behalf, specifically him, because this is his story too. And it's
Hmm.
also mine. So I asked him to just forgive me if I misspeak or I don't speak enough on something. And I shared with him in the ether,
Hmm.
that it was important to me to articulate my story and to share with people in like the hardest time of my life
Yeah.
what it's like to have a community of perfect strangers rally around and be there for you in your toughest time. So it's important for me. And I shared that with
Hmm.
him. I said, I've got to tell this story too, because I think it
Hmm.
is crucial.
If you could speak to that a little bit more, what is that impact of telling the story, of talking about it? Like, how does that change how you process this?
That's a really good question. I think sometimes I'm able to recount my experience in different ways and different textures with people that is new to me, even in the moment. I'm almost processing in real time. And sometimes something will come out of me that I hadn't really thought about, but there was something in me that understood that there is processing going on. The language around suicide is sensitive. Even the word, I found myself tripping over when I had to share the news with people around me or when I just talk about it in general now. It evokes deep fear and emotion from people because you have no choice but to look at your own life and be like, how can somebody do that? What level must you get to in order to, like, with your mental health, to get to that point, that's your option.
Mm.
It's a scary word, and I think, bravely decided to use it more often than even I'm comfortable with,
Mm.
because I'm still not comfortable with it. So if I'm not comfortable with it, the people around me are naturally also uncomfortable with it, but I'm still saying it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, sort of close to what it means to have community, is that you've got safe spaces and people to be able to try on these new words and these new thoughts and these new emotions in a way that, like, you're doing it in real time.
Yeah, I love that you say that in real time because it's happening in a moment as we are talking about it and as we are processing it, right? Like
Yeah,
it is so important because our language, like from what I see, our language shapes our perception. It shapes how we move through the world. So how we talk about these things is going to reflect how we think about it as well,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that really aligns with, like, the whole idea of mental health and in general is how we speak, what the words are that we use impacts our thinking, which then also impacts our emotional states.
Yes.
So if I'm not saying it, or I am saying it in a certain way, then I'm feeling something about it in a certain way, then it comes out in, like, so many different ways, emotionally, physically. Language has really become an important part of my story these days,
Yeah.
and how I say I'm feeling,
Mhm.
and whether or not I use the term suicide or not.
Oh.
Language is big.
Mhm. And like you said, it's a sensitive issue because it speaks to something I think is viscerally real in the human experience, and especially for those who have actually experienced, like yourself, loss of someone, or people who are experiencing these kinds of suicidal thoughts, right?
Kind
It is, and that sensitivity is, it makes sense why it's there, but it can also let us tiptoe around each other and walk this way and that way and try and then we're talking around it, and I understand why we do that, but at the same time, like, what do we lose in doing that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a belief that if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to function in a world where suicide doesn't exist. It's a
Seriously.
lot nicer, to think that this doesn't happen. But it's short-sighted, and understandably so, to think that if we don't talk about it, just the carpet, it goes away. And that's something that the SSP, sorry, and
Mhm.
the community around it have really provided that platform, that
Mhm.
opportunity to use my language to express, to share, and
Yeah,
to, like, call it out from the dark.
beautiful. Yeah, and I really wanna go into the suicide program that you've been part of, but before we do that, I just wanna know, before you joined that program, what was the kind of general sense that you were getting from people after you've had your experience? They know that you went through suicide loss.
what was the kind of the general sense that you were getting from people?
Oh, wow. I learned how much of a ripple a death by suicide has.
Wow.
People were afraid. People were devastated to have learned of his loss and where he was
Yeah.
at. They were like deeply, deeply sad. I think still are for me.
Yeah.
So there was this reckoning with suicide. Oh my gosh, the shock, the trauma. And then there was also the deep care and love and compassion for the people that are left and still here.
Mhm.
And there was this like inadequacy to have conversation around it. And I don't mean that in like a demeaning way at all. It's just because we don't have that language, because we're not used to talking about it. I found that a lot of people just didn't know how to talk about it. What do you need, Vanessa?
Mhm.
How can I help? And I found I was the one sort of setting up like, here's what I can need. I need space here. I need this. So like I was doing
Mhm.
the traffic controlling of others also reckoning with this loss, this trauma, and people just don't know what to do. They just don't
Mhm.
know what to do. They don't know how to support the families, the friends, the girlfriends who are left behind. And I understand it. I don't judge them for that. I understand. It was like we were all lost in one
Mhm.
moment together. It's deeply uncomfortable for people to know what to do. What do I do? What do you need? Don't know. I don't
Yeah, right?
know.
Why that's why I'm asking you,
Yeah, we're
you
all
know?
holding on to this like board floating in the ocean together. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, like a life jacket, maybe a hot cup of coffee. I don't
Yeah,
know,
right.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's so powerful, that sense of like just realizing that like nobody knows how to talk about this, It's because it's so sensitive and we're so hurt by it, by this happening, both the person that is experiencing it and then those who are trying to support those who are going through this. It's like, what the hell do we do? And what I've found, we always ask this question, like, what do I say? What am I supposed to say? I have found so many times that it's not really about what you say.
Yeah.
It's more about listening.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that I've picked up on too. I am traditionally a fixer. Like you've got a
Hmm.
problem emotionally or otherwise, I want to fix. I want to help. What can I do?
Hmm.
Here's some advice. Here's a link. Here's a book. And I had some of that come my way, which I appreciate. And I noted sometimes I just want to cry in your lap. Sometimes I just
Yeah.
want you to be quiet while I ramble on. Sometimes I want you to just not call me for a day or two so that I've got the spaciousness to like be sad and cry and be alone
Hmm.
for a second. And so now I'm noticing that weaved into my everyday that when somebody has shared with me something they're going through,
Hmm. Yeah.
tell me more. Like, what's going on? And that
Right.
is so powerful. It's so simple. It's so much
Yeah.
simpler to be a fixer with not having to fix anything. Like, I just need
Right.
to listen and open my heart and just be another human being across from you.
Yes.
That's all you need. I don't need to fix. That's become
Hmm.
really, really evident in my life.
No, absolutely. Do you think, switching into going to the one-on-one sessions that you were doing with the Suicide Survivor Program, is that something that you learned in that
Mhm.
space? Is that something that came up a lot more in the listening?
I think I learned it by experiencing it. Yeah, it wasn't overt to be like, okay, Vanessa, you're gonna talk and we're gonna listen.
Right.
But it's what I noticed. I noticed the soft pauses when I was sharing, that I wasn't quite done sharing everything. They didn't respond quickly with a like, that's normal, don't worry about it, or here's a graph to look at when you're feeling sad. Like there wasn't that. Like they gave me resources, absolutely. But they're pausing to let me share and continue to share when they sense that maybe I had more that was coming out of me. That was beautiful and powerful. I know that they had like some sort of guidelines, like if conversation wasn't jogging or like they needed to, get a topic out or something. I know that they had that, but um, I don't think we needed it. I was just able to share and bring like the realest feelings, emotions, fears, like their shame and guilt, like that is so deep in this kind of death that I felt able to come to the table with them because they too have experienced suicide loss. So there was a awful but necessary camaraderie between us where I understood, okay, you've gone through something like this before, maybe a while ago, but you've gone through this. You're a few more steps ahead of me in this. Yeah, having that space held for me was like of utmost importance to beginning to build a foundation of healing.
Could you walk me through just what a typical session looks
Yeah.
like a one-on-one session, like I think of for a lot of people, especially that first time in there, like what the hell is happening here, right? So I would love to just hear like kind of what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. Like it is a bit of an awkward thing because you're like deep in despair, and all of a sudden you're cracking open a Zoom call with perfect strangers to share what's going on. But and I say they, sorry, because I was matched up with one person, but I think that they were supporting one another. And I don't know if one of them might have been in training or something like that. I'm not quite sure. Couldn't tell if anybody was in training, but I had 2-on-1, but for the simplicity's sake, we can call it the 1-on-1. There was a sense of safety created immediately when we got on. Like, so they held the container for me. They set expectations for me about what I could expect, that we were going to meet once weekly at a regularly set time, which was crucial for like some sort of like stability for me. They shared with me that they had frameworks to work from if we ever got stuck on a topic, and they have resources to share should I ever want it. But the prominent message to me was, this is for you right now. This is your time to share, to ask questions. We will support you in whatever comes up, and know that nothing that's coming up is wrong or bad or shameful. And just hearing that, I know my nervous system relaxed a little bit. Didn't erase it, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this opportunity with these people to really express the things that are coming up for me. And they're sharing their own experiences too. So we didn't get into details about their experiences with suicide, but there were times where they did share parts of their story that to me is such a vulnerable act between strangers that I felt was really comforting to know that I wasn't alone in some of the thoughts that I was having, and they didn't have to stay
Mhm.
in me. I could get them out, and then it was mirrored back like, yes, I also felt the same when my ... died.
Right.
That was It's very easy to go lonely in this
Mhm.
experience where it's like, it's just me, it's just my story, it's just my circumstance, nobody else feels this way. So to have people on the other end saying like, no, I get this, I understand, was really, really
Beautiful.
crucial.
I'm wondering, as you were moving through those sessions, was there any particular moment that you started feeling a shift of your perspective, or you started feeling not better, because I don't think that's what the right word is,
Mhm.
but started feeling like there's some change going on in me?
I don't know if I felt change. What I did come to feel was a sense of security when I knew that my call was due. Like even my friends and family knew when it was time, when it was like Monday, 6 p.m. That's like Vanessa's offline time.
Mm,
So I think what happened as we got into our routine and our groove of meeting is that the other people around me could also recognize that this was sort of my time. And I
mhm,
recognized this was my time. I prepared, not, like a student in advance, but I knew going, with a week in between each call, I knew I had a week to like collect thoughts, questions, experiences I had. I'm like, oh, okay, I can bring that to my one-on-one. And that's my place for me to express it, to work through it. They're not therapists. Like that was, a whole other area. But if something came up that I felt I could specifically address with my one-on-one, I did that. So I think what it did is not changed me, but it gave me a sense of stability in quite possibly
Mm.
the most unstable time of my life.
Sounds like it was like an anchor point even in the week, right?
Yes.
While everything is just in chaos, but there's that. It's like, okay, but I'm going to be going there and I'm going to be talking and I'm going to be
Yes.
in this session that I understand with people who can hold the space for me.
Yes.
6 p.m. Monday. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
fine.
I mean, that whole period, because it was very soon after his death, that whole period still feels very hazy to me.
Mm.
But it did allow me to like shelve some things for a moment. Like in my notebook, I would like write out a couple things that I wanted to bring to our next call. And it allowed me to shelve just a couple of things because my God, there's, 400 things running through your mind and body in these moments that if I got to operate with 399 for the week, that was like a relief to be like, okay, that
Mm.
one thing I get to just put here for a bit and I will address it. I'm not stuffing it down, but like I will address it. So that was like
Mm.
life saving, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that, even circling back to like what we said in the beginning of our show here when
Yeah.
we were talking about talking our story and saying our story, right? We've got a million thoughts going. And when you're in the midst of true grief, I can't even imagine how many million thoughts are going at like 1,000 miles an hour, which and they all seem important or relevant. And then in the moment because they're so it's part of the process, right? But then when you come to the session, you only have so much time to say everything, right? You have to bring out those words, the words that happen in that moment in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's also, I say with the one-on-one, there was like a normalizing that went on and not,
Mm,
it didn't take away the pain.
yeah,
It just helped soothe me in certain things that I was ruminating on that
yeah.
were just like not stopping in my mind. But to have somebody say to me, Vanessa, this is normal. I also
Hmm.
felt this. I also experienced this. I also, my goodness, in a world that doesn't want to talk about feelings, to like be loaded into this environment where like it's all feelings. It's so important.
There's someone who's just like, yep, that also happened to me, you know?
Yeah.
So, because I think we feel so isolated. Like suicide loss can be such an isolating experience. Suicide in general, like you don't know how to talk about it. Like everything we've talked about today, you know. And then when someone can just say, I get it. I do have a question for you though on this point. You mentioned that in the one-on-one, these people they themselves are survivors. They've experienced suicide loss. For those who haven't experienced suicide loss, do you think that they're able to hold space for survivors in the same kind of way? Is it still possible to really allow someone and connect with someone even though you haven't really experienced that? What do you think?
Yeah. For some reason, this makes me want to cry out of all the things
I
we talked
know.
about. Like this. Yeah, I do. I do think it's
Mm,
possible. And
mm,
I think what helps make that possible is I had to learn what to ask for, which adds a little bit of pressure to the person who's grieving. Like, oh, now I need to come up with rules so that you know what to, how you. But I mean, I think it was a good life lesson, just in general. When we're dealing with other human beings in this like one
mm,
life that we've been given to live, is really learning what I needed in the moment. But the only way I can ask other people what I need for what I need is understanding first what I need.
mm.
So really taking
Wow.
some time to like spend on my own, be like, what do I need right now? Do I need silence? Do I need that shoulder to cry on? Do I need to talk about this death and this experience for 3 hours straight? Like what is it that I need? And I found that those who haven't experienced suicide loss in their life until now we're really open to that. We're really
Mm-hmm.
open to hear, me say like, can I ask for what I need here? And
Mm.
you weirdly become a teacher in it when you're in it, which doesn't feel great. It's
Yep.
kind of, you want to be held and taken care of and supported. And I also understand now how deeply this affects people, that it requires like strengths from both parties, the ones that are like more intimately involved in it and the ones that are more on the periphery. It takes a collaboration between the two.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too, if there are people listening who haven't experienced it, who are looking for ways to help their person who has gone through a suicide loss that's close to them, I think it's to listen. I think it's to listen to the cues and clues that your person who is lost is expressing. And maybe they're subtly asking for time. Maybe they're subtly asking for space. Maybe they're subtly asking for a moment to talk about their person. But just be aware instead of like coming back to the person, be like, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
Lasagna. Just
man.
send me a lasagna. Like, I don't know.
Wow. I love that. So because what you've done is you've recognized that it's a collaborative experience that takes both people on the side of the people who haven't experienced that loss and they're trying to support someone who is in that loss. It's about really listening and and not always asking like, what do you need? What do you need? Because that can just feel like too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just really listening. And then on the other side, it's the person who has experienced loss. Just, I would say, like you said, like the teacher thing. Oh, it drives me nuts too. But perhaps a guide, like, okay, you could talk to me like this,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And I think it requires deep, deep vulnerability on both sides of this like grieving
Mm.
collaboration. I had a friend reach out, and I will never forget this for as long as our friendship lasts, which I think now it's going to be quite a long time, where he reached out to me vulnerably and said, I feel like I haven't been there enough for you. And he
Mm.
wasn't asking for me to support him or to soothe him. He was like, just, and again, he asked in his way, like, what do you need? But like, let me know. Like, there was just, I sensed from him in our conversation that there was a feeling of like, I don't know how to show up for you. I don't know what to do. And I'm feeling this way. He wasn't putting his stuff on me. And he was able to open the door for me to come forward and say, this is actually what I need, So yeah, maybe,
Mm.
and he hadn't been quiet. I hadn't felt that way, but I'm like, if you're feeling quiet, but you're feeling called to reach out to me, whenever I cross your mind, reach out to me. That means the world
Mm.
to me. And really, it's not big. It's a small thinking of you, dot, 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 with a heart.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you.
Mm.
That's it sometimes. That's all you need to do. If that person who's grieving crosses your mind, just let them know. Just let them know.
Wow.
That's really been important for me and that's weirdly surprising to know how many people come out and like just love and care and are concerned. Um, so yeah, sometimes the simplest things, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture of lasagna and therapy
Mm.
sessions. It's just a text to say, I love you.
Right. Wow. Yeah, and this brings in the simplicity that's needed in a complex world and in a complex situation like suicide loss,
Yeah.
right? That's just so powerful. It's just the simplest little thing, like you said, just I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
Amazing that how powerful that can be.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. You nailed it. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Well, you know what? I want to move into then the group sessions.
Yeah.
So you did the one-on-one sessions, and then you also did the group sessions.
Yeah.
And I'm sure those were like with everything we've talked today about how other people respond around you, and of course other survivors. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what that group session was like for you?
Sure. Yeah. I was strangely more nervous about the group sessions than I thought I would be. Not because I have a problem talking. I mean, clearly I can talk, but there was I was hit by a wave when I first turned on the Zoom link for the call, where I think there was like 8 or 9 of us. So like there's 8 or 9 squares that show up, and just seeing these faces who were strangers to me, but we all knew why we were there. We
Mhm.
all had various relationships with different people in our lives who had died by suicide, and we all knew why we were there. And I was overwhelmed by emotion, not in a bad way, but just in a
Yeah.
like we're all here. And that was
Mhm.
strangely, I don't want to use the word comforting, but there was like a camaraderie in the survivor ness of the group, where
Yeah.
like everybody around this table decided that they needed help, that they needed support, that they needed a network, and they all signed up. They all had an intake interview. They all clicked join on that link, and they showed up that day. And that's, I think, what filled me with emotion, to be like, okay, we want to set our course for healing, not to be healed. This is never going to be fixed. It's never going to leave us, but we wanted to set a foundation for our healing. And that was really beautiful to experience those faces looking back at me, to say, like, you're in this with me. And in the group, a lot of our conversations talked about our experience of grief and of suicide loss, and what are typical feelings that go along with that. And there was also a deep focus on honoring the person that we'd lost. There was a form of ritual in doing that, whether we shared poetry or we just talked about the person. And as the weeks went on, when we met, we started to know each other's person,
Mm.
whether it was by a picture or a name, which felt really good, that we could like sit in a group and I could say to somebody who was in the group, whoever it is they might have lost, and use their first name. It really humanized the whole experience. I mean, this whole experience is deeply, deeply human, but it 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 was really important to be around other people who had been through a loss like this. That wasn't
Mhm.
family, that wasn't a therapist, that wasn't friends or coworkers. They were strangers, but they were in the raw trenches of suicide grief with me, and
Yeah.
that bonds people.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to go in a little bit more if we could. What is it about putting the, for lack of a better word, spotlight, bringing into light those who were lost to suicide? Like you said, we really focus in on them.
Like the honoring of them, you
Wow.
mean?
Yes, the honoring of them. Why is that so powerful?
That's a really good question, Will.
Yeah, it's an
Because
interesting one, right?
yeah, because I was of split mind with it at times, just based on my own emotional state. Um, like there's a part of me that understood that honoring was important, but it also made his death real, and I didn't like that.
Mm,
Like I was speaking in past tense all of a sudden. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
so it's a for lack of a better term, like a rite of passage, I guess, in grief, to start to honor and talk about that person in that way, and to
Mm,
do it in a safe environment with others who are also probably feeling the same feelings of like, ew, I'm speaking about my loved one in past tense. It's doesn't feel good. Um,
right.
it's helpful, and I guess moving the grief through you and not moving forward to get away from it, because you don't,
Mhm.
but just moving it around, moving the grief around. That's like I'm massaging
Yeah.
grief. This is not going away. This is not going away.
Massaging grief. I love that.
Right? Like the knot still comes up every once in a while. You go for a deep tissue and then it like relaxes, but it comes back up again. And um I I I think that sharing our loved ones together gave our people a voice outside
Mm,
of the stigma that exists around suicide. So they were
mm,
real people brought to the forefront, their faces, their names. If we felt comfortable, we didn't always have to do that. Um, they were made real
mhm.
with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
make it real, right? Really bring it into the experience, and then you see them, right? And that's so interesting when you bring up like starting to talk about it in past tense. Again, it's that language where we adjust how we're talking about these people who are so important in our lives, but through saying it to others, and especially others who are also experience that loss, it makes it real. It's no longer in these abstract realms. It's like now, and this why it's so hard to do as well.
I know
My
you read
God.
my face there.
Yeah.
You're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah. Yeah. Like, well, it is. It's probably one of the hardest things to do is to really bring in these visceral experiences.
yeah.
You
And
know.
and this is like, I don't want to wear out the word, but this is a traumatic death. And in both the
Hmm.
one-on-one and the group, there is discussion around like a traumatic death means, what trauma means,
Yeah.
and just giving that language and some level of understanding. It's there's no hierarchy of death. I can't say like this one's better than the other one. It comes with its own texture. It comes with its own
Hmm.
nuance that, not a lot of people have experience with. So,
Right.
um, yeah, talking about somebody in past tense following a traumatic death
Hmm.
is not an easy thing to do, because I still have moments where I don't believe it,
Yeah.
and I have to shake my head and be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
that happened,"
Mm.
So yeah, I think a lot of the group discussion allowed us some compassion and grace to vacillate between different states of like talking about them as if they were
Mm.
in the next room, and
Yeah.
talking about them as if they had died. And
Hmm.
then anything in between.
I think, like we were talking before, making it normalized and natural. So you even experiencing like, still catching yourself not talking in the past tense, whatever, like that in itself is so natural because it's just like we're still processing this. It's just, we get lost in our own heads and then it's not even we forget. I don't think that's the right word. It's like we just don't fully bring it into our embodied experience because it's just, like you said, just so traumatic
Yeah.
for a moment, and then we move through it and we process it, and this is why it's a process, the
Yeah.
grief
And
process.
this is something that I'm learning about trauma more and more,
Hmm.
is that there are no rules to it. And it looks and feels different every moment of the day, every hour of the day. Like, I'm talking about it now with you. We've got,
Yeah.
podcast microphones on, and I can speak about it now. I can turn off this camera and have a meltdown for the next day and a
Mm.
half. And not everybody sees that. And I'm learning these ups and downs and these waves through it. Um, and it's just a lot to handle. And the more support I found that I could like dig up and uncover and use and lean on, the easier and softer those waves were for like the deep drops and the highs, or the neutrals. I don't even know if I'm at the highs yet, but the neutrals. Um, yeah, it's helpful to like, even just having this conversation, I've no doubt is immensely healing for me, because I can speak about his death in a way that feels different. I'm processing in real time. Like I said at the top
Right.
of our conversation, like I know after this, like there's going to be something new that's come out in me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you are doing incredible.
Thank you.
Like I absolutely love this conversation.
Me too.
You are just so real.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you sharing that like, because we can watch a podcast, we can watch a show and hear someone talk about it, but like you said, you're like, this isn't always the way that it is. It's later, it could be different. Later I could be crashing. Later I might feel even better. Maybe I'll just be neutral. Like it's constantly, the real time will be later and that will be another real time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In another way,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I would love to just no, before we move on to our next little segment here,
Mhm.
you've experienced this traumatic loss and you have been doing incredible things of moving through this. How has it changed your perspective in general on life, on your
Oof.
own life, on what you've been doing, if it has at all, just whatever comes to mind.
This loss, you mean? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
or yeah, whatever comes to mind in terms of like your life now, where like how it's.
Well, we need another like 7-hour podcast.
Yeah, all right. We may do that
Wait,
actually.
wait for the book, you know?
Seriously,
Wow.
yeah. Too. I know it's
Yeah.
kind of a wild one because when death comes into our life and how does it change how we think about things, it may not be something we can put into words. So I just, feel free to say or not say anything you'd like. Sure.
Thanks.
I'd like to know, if you feel comfortable sharing how this loss and this process of grief that you've been going through has changed your perspective on life, on the world, on what you've been doing and how you present yourself in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Um, this is maybe a little more existential than what we've gone into so far, but I think it's important for people to hear, for somebody to hear, is that it's become really, really evident to me that everything is always changing, whether that's my grief right now, whether it was the mental health state of my boyfriend, whether it's circumstances in our lives. At your lowest, lowest, lowest point, it will change. At your highest pinnacle point, it will change. There's always this. And the aim is not to like get out of the hole or stay at the summit. It is how well do you ride those waves? What supports and resources do you put into place to soften out the waves so that the spikes aren't as dramatic and,
Mm.
crashing in on you? I'm not saying that I have any idea how to control the ups and downs in life, but having a death by suicide in my life, in my story now, has highlighted for me how fragile life is, how important everybody's mental health is. Mental health means something very different to me now than it ever did. Yeah. Things are always changing. Grief is always changing. Its texture is always changing. And so, not to get too attached to the state that I feel in right now, because it could change in the next minute and it'll change in the next minute, which then leads me to the even further existential statement, which is about learning how to be present. If none of this is real, if it can end like that, a relationship, a life, a job, then enjoy what we've got right now as best as we can, even in the depths of despair and grief. Sometimes I have a little cracking open that I'm like, I would never be able to see life like this had I not had a loss like this.
Yeah.
That's that's life changing. Like that is a whole new lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was incredible. That was so good. I I'm at a loss of words because it doesn't need any, right? That was so beautiful because it just brings it into that experience of everything is changing and be here now.
Yeah.
It's like
Ram
that
Dass.
simple, yeah, right?
Ram Dass.
Ram Dass bringing him on back,
My goodness.
It's
Listening to him now is a very different
oh,
experience. Yes.
very different, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's truly incredible that you have gone through this journey and arrived and are continuing on this path of finding this,
Yeah. Thanks for
you
that
know,
clarification too, because it's
right?
not
Because
like
it's not,
done.
no.
Yeah.
There's a great quote that I really love from a movie, one of my favorite movies called Waking Life.
Right.
Beautiful movie. And one of the characters, he says, the idea is to be in a constant state of departure while always arriving.
Wow.
So cool, where
Wow.
it's just
Can,
the ebb and flow.
can you
Right?
say that again, just so it like really sticks for
Yeah.
me?
The idea is to be in a constant state of departure while always arriving.
Just hit stop right
Yeah,
now. Like
right. Yeah,
we're
that's
good.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my
Yeah.
the character in this. He's driving in a boat car. He's just like a strange like sailor dude, loves the ocean. And it's a quote that has stuck with me for most of my life. It's been something that I've tried to move towards, and I honestly believe that people who have experienced suicide loss and people who have gone through their own suicidal thoughts and questions get closer than a lot of others to seeing this and to bringing this into their lives.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you for bringing that in. I know I just like threw you just like this
No,
hardcore question,
I'm
but
here for it all. Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned also that this has changed your perspective on mental health.
Yeah.
So I would love to go into a little bit about particularly men's mental health in Canada.
Yeah.
Seeing as, your suicide loss happened to be, a man who was important in your life.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about that here. What do you think is missing from our conversation about mental health in Canada, from men's mental health
Yeah.
particularly?
I mean, I want to be very clear that I'm going to be like broad brushing men
Yes.
in some of the things that I say, and I don't mean it. Like I'm not a man. I can't speak on behalf of men. I've had
Mhm.
one man who I love present,
Yeah.
deciding to die by suicide, and I witnessed his mental health decline. So this is what I'm drawing on. It's
Yeah.
not a, broad stroke. This is what every man goes through or does. Everybody's on varying levels. But I get a sense that men have been conditioned, brought up in a society where they are taught and revered to fix, not feel. And feeling is like, what are these emotions and what do I do with them and how do I fix them? But any man-woman relationship or like male-female gendered relationship, if you're the more feminine and you're expressing yourself and your emotions to the masculine's like coming back with like, okay, what can we do? Here are the like 7 bullet points that we can fix it. And I think this is what men know. And so when life and circumstance and emotions and the body all kind of come together to like really get shaken up, it's hard to know what to do with that. And I think it is a real house of cards that a lot of men's emotional health is, kind of struggling with. I think that there's a whole world of the work that has opened up with us, like our generation, our time, where there's a lot more focus on being able to examine your feelings, examine your thoughts. We've got all these modalities, healing modalities out there to go to. And I think that there are a lot more men that are doing that. But we still haven't really cracked open this embracing of men's mental health in a way that is working. I think there are a lot of resources out there for mental health in general. I don't know if there's enough. I don't know if it's as accessible as it can be. I think that there's a lot of prohibitive elements to it, whether it's cost for therapy, and then there's the stigma around a man, seeking help. So for my boyfriend in particular, I had supported and wanted him to find a men's group. I have women I meet with on the regular basis, whether it's emotional or about our businesses or whatnot. And I think he had his old friends, which were good and comforting, but having a network of healthy men around him, I think could have really helped his emotional state. And we tried to find men's groups in Ontario, in Canada, and they were kind of polarizing. They weren't, they weren't really readily available, or they're deeply entrenched in like one sort of way of thinking. And I noted that that's something like that is really missing for men to be able to connect with other healthy, whatever healthy men are, to talk about their feelings and emotions, to talk about the pressures that exist for men. And just because they're doing that doesn't take away resources for mental health for women. Like, we still need that too.
Right.
Just because one
course.
exists doesn't mean we're taking away from the other, I hope. I'm not an
Mhm.
expert in the healthcare system, but I think we can do as a society a better job at embracing men wanting to evolve and grow their emotional health,
Mhm.
their mental health.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
You really hit on something really powerful there. It's that opportunity for men to connect in a space where they can talk freely about what it means to be a man and what's really going on.
Yeah.
What I have found through my experience as being a man in 2025 is that if you want to find a space of other men to connect with, you largely have two options. You have religion and you have sports. And I'm not big on religion. You know, I really support people who do choose that way because it can be really beautiful and help a lot of people. Great. If it's not something that fits for you, there are sports. But the thing about sports, like I got a bunch of hockey friends. They're awesome. You know, they're really great. We have an incredible time. But sometimes it can be hard to bring in real conversations when you're in the midst of a game or something about the game. It's just not the place. It can come up. It absolutely does in some circumstances, but it's not a full space for it. You know,
Yeah.
it has to really kind of be pushed, which I have in the past, you know.
Good for
All
you.
right, boys,
Yeah.
let's talk about this, you
Yeah.
know. And then
Yeah.
they're like, "Why are you talking about that, man?"
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, like this is why I think, yeah, you like you said, making some kind of group or a place where men can come together and just appreciate each other and see, like, that's another man right there, right? And
Yeah.
he has his shit,
Yeah.
that he's going through,
Yeah.
even though he may not be talking about it, you know.
Yes.
And if he wants to, then this is the space to do it. I totally hear you, and I think like that could just help so many men. It's
Yes.
definitely something that's helped me in the past with where I've just had good close male friendships that have allowed me to do that.
Yeah. And I think this deepens our conversation about the one-on-one and the group support, is that there's not one resource that can help, right? It's weirdly like diversifying your investments. So yes, there's therapy, there's yoga, there's sports, there's group and one-on-one support groups, and having a men's support group or a women's support group just fleshes out like the full complement of modalities that we can use for your own personal journey. And you can pick and choose and sort of curate it for yourself if you've got the wherewithal. But I don't know that that exists for men, at least like in my experience, trying to find like together, he and I were trying to find men's groups. And to your point, there were like deeply, deeply religious groups, and like he wasn't, so that didn't really jive with him. And the one other thing I would add to this, and I'm not saying just women need to do this, like it can be men and women, but my own experience, this was years ago with an ex-boyfriend. We had a bit of a heated fight and things got fiery between us, and he started to cry. And he was frustrated. And like I said, it got heated. It wasn't pleasant. I'm not proud of it. I'm sure he was not proud of it. And I noticed my response and my reaction to him having a bit of a meltdown in front of me was not pretty. I couldn't handle seeing it. I didn't like it. I went immediately to diminishing it. I was not where I am today. This was many, many years
Mhm.
ago, and I've done a lot of work since then. But I reflect back on that time about my state, my capacity to hold my partner at the time, emotions was garbage. And
Mhm.
if I'm doing that, like I'm sure that this happens elsewhere, like man up, chin up, pull
Of
yourself up by your
course.
bootstraps, do it on your own. Like these are bullshit pieces of
Mm.
advice. And I really do hope that there are more and more spaces for men that can open up, that are healthy, that are not surrounding, just talking about women or, have,
Yeah.
maybe booze involved. I think that can also be, like a campfire, you don't have to be roaring at the moon like wolves, but something that feels like authentic and men can develop a brotherhood with one another. I want those kind of men around me. I want my brother to
Mhm.
be that, my brother-in-law. I want my men friends to have that. Like that's who I
Yeah.
want to be surrounded with healthy men. I
Yeah.
think that would be really beautiful. So if you're in the
Yeah.
market, well,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah. Well, that is something that I'm trying to build is a men's philosophical group. It's something that I'm moving toward. I'm going to call it Men in Question.
Yes.
And we're going to thump our chest while talking about philosophy. you know.
And maybe
But
get a few
I
emotions might come out after
yeah,
the
a
chest
few,
thumping.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna move through that together, and
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be really interesting. But I really appreciate you bringing up that point. I think that is so important that you had a time when you weren't able to allow a man to be vulnerable, and that's totally understandable because it can be hard to do, whether it's from our training and in conditioning and education, our culture, wherever it comes from. But it's I think that experience is quite natural for both men and women.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to see that. It's hard to watch that. And changing the discussion, to moving this towards it doesn't have to be so hard. We
Mm.
can just let that be. This is part of what it is to be a human, not just a man, but a human, you
Mhm.
know? So you going through this process of now getting to where you are and being, open about where you were, I think that is just so powerful because that speaks to the men who are listening to this,
Mm.
who maybe have experienced whether it's the quiet or very vocal eyes of, kind of belittling or
Ew. Yeah.
pushing aside.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
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 And then and for the women too, who either maybe in a subconscious level are experiencing this or actually are experiencing this and or like yourself have grown from this, to where they are now. Like
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate that.
Yeah.
You
Thank you.
know. Well, Vanessa, if people want to follow you or find out more about what you've been doing, where can they go?
I'd be happy to share this, Will, because
Mm.
one of the things I haven't mentioned in our conversation was um, at the same time that I experienced this loss, my longtime work contract also came to an end rather abruptly, but
Wow.
it was unexpected. Let's just say that it was unexpected. So I found myself sort of with both my work life and my love life having burned to the ground essentially. And I only know this now that the burning of the ground clears the way and the brush for new things to grow. And after a little while, I felt ready-ish to start going back out into the work world to seek out clients. I am a consultant and have acted as a consultant for small businesses to help them grow and evolve and thrive. So I went back to my resume. I dusted it off to be like, okay, I need to re-enter this new world. And I hated it immediately. I did not like the resume. I don't like the bullet points. I don't like listing my hobbies that nobody cares about at the bottom of the page. So instead, I decided to build myself a website, which I affectionately coined the term a life site. So this is, yes, my working experience, my experience timeline, the places I've worked, the education I have. And I fleshed it out with the things that really stitch together a whole life of me. So where I volunteer. So I'm a big sister. I've helped some other advisory committees with their work. I've run a fundraiser for them. I had so much more life than just the bullet points on my resume. So I built a life site and I put it out into the world. I've called myself a creative collaborator and I'm happy to work with small to medium businesses. Solo entrepreneurs are also fun for me to work with and just sort of put it out to the universe about like, here I am, I'm a creative collaborator. Let's see if we've got, a spark. And once I sent it out to my network, this Lifesite, I had a flurry of my people come back to me saying, I would like one of these Lifesites. I want my life represented in a full and holistic way, the way you've done yours. So I'm now currently building out a couple of Lifesites for people from vastly different backgrounds. They're different flavors of Lifesites altogether. Some are very professional. Some are, launching a small business. Some are a little bit more like mine, which is more like personality based and experience based. Nonetheless, it's been a surprise rising of the phoenix, and I am
Yeah.
taking this new course, this new path, and I'll see where it takes me next. Yeah. So the website is vanessarawecki.com. I hope you'll be able to share it with your listeners if they're interested in finding me, and you'll see my life site right up there. You'll see my face right up there in front, and you'll be able to see what it is that I've created for myself, which I think is really exciting and novel. And I think you'll see a lot of success.
Absolutely. Out of the ashes.
Out of the
My
ashes.
God. Into life. And I love that idea of life site. I think you're hitting on something so important in the world of work, where we send these resumes that are supposed to say what our entire experience has been in a couple, less than 300 words now they want.
Yeah.
It's like if maybe, you have more than 200 words in your resume and they're like, yeah, no. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to be sharing that information in the show notes so that people can find you and go and discover more about what you've been doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
There's another thing that I'd like to talk to you about here, which is an event that we're having with the Distress Center of Greater Toronto. It's called the Walk to End Suicide. And this is a fundraiser event we're going to be doing in September. It's going to be on September 6th. Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about this. Do you think this is an event that you would be interested in attending?
Hands down. And for all of the reasons that we spoke about today, I think shedding light and awareness and hopefully walking away from the stigma so that we can talk about our feelings at a different level is really important. So absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a really, really important event for survivors, for families, for just general mental health. I think this is crucial that as communities, we come together. And I know the word community gets bandied around a lot, but I have a different relationship with what community means now. And sometimes that's maybe walking beside a stranger for a kilometer and having a quick conversation that you don't know that they say something that changes your life or vice versa, and then you never see each other again. That's still community. And if this walk can help promote those types of conversations, and that just knowing that you're amongst a sea of people that also have experiences, I think it's really, really healing.
That is exactly what we're going for. We want to bring awareness to suicide in the GTA, in Canada, and the world, while also giving the opportunity for people to connect and be with each other, whether, like you said, suicide loss, or they have had experiences with these kinds of thoughts, or just people who want to support the community and recognize the gravity of this issue in our country, in our world, and I think it's just so powerful. If people like you are going to be there, it's going to be an awesome event. It's going to be so much fun, because this conversation with you has been so real. And I just appreciate you so much for coming on here and telling your story and just giving us all of the things that you've experienced and gone through. I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll extend the same level of gratitude to you. You create an incredibly safe space, and you are an excellent listener and just a provider of a platform for me to be able to heal in real time. I hope I did my man good. I
Oh,
know
you
this is
did.
like so grammatically incorrect, but like I hope I did him good.
I did him good.
And yeah, then represented his story and our story well. And you helped me get this story out and process in this way, in this moment. Be here now. This is all we got.
Yes.
And I am so deeply, deeply grateful for you.
Thank you so much. In real time, we did it together.
Yeah.
It was a good
It
collaboration.
really was. It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vanessa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate that.